Hi, this is Yvon Prehn, and this is part 2 on our writing for the web, where no matter what the media, good writing is good writing. Now, this is an article that will be included with the PDF of the handouts. It's also going to be included in a little booklet over here that I am going to be making available on the web. By the time these videos are published, it will be up on the web. But I wanted to go over these things with you. Up at the top, Lee Iacocca in USA Today, and talking about writing, said, "Say it in English and keep it short. Write the way you talk. If you don't talk that way, don't write that way." No matter whether you're writing for the web, paper, whatever, in ministry, be yourself, be honest, and write for results, not just to inspire. Let me just go over this article briefly where I talk about, have you ever heard someone described as being so heavenly minded they were no earthly good? And also, too, in a similar vein, the book of James says, faith by itself, it is not accompanied by action, is dead. I go on to talk about how this describes a lot of church writing where we might write very beautiful and wonderful things, but we need to tie our words to action. That's what Jesus did. And in the Sermon on the Mount, he gives numerous examples of this where he talks about how you are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth, and then your action, let your light shine. Then he asks, why do you worry about these things? The action, then don't worry. And so a really good example, lesson, and really almost command for us to follow in our writing is when you teach something, then be clear about the actions. If you want people to do something based on your communication, tell them clearly. Don't assume they will figure out what you want or give or volunteer based on vague spiritual promptings. People don't have the time to figure all this stuff out. Much of the writing done in newsletters, bulletins, all these sorts of things really needs a response. So ask for it. For example, if you're writing to inspire a life change based on Christian teaching, give a brief biblical lesson, follow with a clear statement of how to apply it. Have a daily devotion. Plan on reading the Bible through in a year. Make a prayer list and pray through it every day. Whatever it is, teach specific action. If you need volunteers, state the need. List clearly how many people you need, what the requirements and commitments are, what training will be given. If you have a financial need, give the background, show precisely what the funds will be used for, then ask for a clear commitment. And let me say also a couple of things. You probably have to repeat the message more than once. In other seminars, I've talked about how 7 times at least is a standard in advertising for people to usually even begin to hear and remember something. So state it clearly and repeat it. And then double check to make certain these things are done. I was recently, and this is a true story, I'm not going to name any names so as not to embarrass people specifically, but this really happened. I was talking to someone who was lamenting how their church was really having a hard time getting enough people to teach Sunday school class and, children's Sunday school. And now I know many of you can identify with that. And I said to the person, well, how are you letting people know that there's a need? And she said, well, we put it in the bulletin every week. It's on the website. And I said, let me take a look at it. Maybe, something in the wording, whatever. I looked at both of them, and I don't know where it was, but it was not anywhere in the bulletin. And it was a short little bulletin. I could not find it on the website. Now, this was a trustworthy person. I'm sure she didn't intentionally not tell me the truth, but somehow or other she thought that this request for volunteers was in there, but she didn't check to make sure that it was. And of course, they weren't getting anybody because nobody knew there was a need. So some of these things aren't, like they always say, it didn't. It's not brain surgery, but we need to double check on things and make sure that what we need to have done is being done. Now, also, too, really important, both in print and on the web, people don't consume content in one gulp. Study after study shows that when people receive a printed piece, for example, 20% won't even read it. 80% read what we call level 1, the headlines, the subheads. They'll look at the pictures and they'll read the captions. 10 to 60% will look at level 2, which is short sections of copy, boxed copy, graphs, and captions. 1 to 10% will read level 3, which is the body copy. More will read that if they are going to either the site or the content intentionally looking for information. People make decisions on all of these levels, and the best pieces are good on all the levels. Now I'm going to show you an example in print, and then we'll talk about how to apply this to the web. Okay, here in print, when you are handed something like this, chances are you probably won't read it. If you're like most people and 80% read the headlines, just claim your ministry now is the only thing that you will read. And you'll put this aside, as I often say, you put it in the, well, I'll get around to it when I have time. That pile, sort of the guilt pile for reading that we all have huge piles of in our homes and offices. And chances are you won't even read it. Sadly, it'll never get read, and it was very important. Now look at how different this is. I did not change one single word in it. And I will make available for you a book that that you can actually see this in print, this whole example, because it's very, very instructive. But just by breaking it into sections, having a headline, Claim Your Own Ministry Now. Claiming My Ministry is a volunteer program at First Church that seeks to enable and encourage every person in the congregation to discover and practice their spiritual gifts, then going down through it, breaking the content into sections where people can skim it, having a good caption under the picture. People will figure out what is going on. Now, with your website, you want to do the same thing. Work on your headlines. Work on your subheads. The best ones are really sentences without periods. You don't want to just give a label. For example, on my website, I could have something like strategy. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. I'll show you how I actually did this in a minute. Just that alone, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, doesn't tell you anything. You need to make it complete. You need to make a scan make sense so that when people scan through step 1, what is that? Step 2, what is that? They can read it. They know what it means. Think of your subheads, your things like that as a layer of content on top of the other layer. If people find those topics interesting and worth their time, they'll read the rest. So now let's look at how I did that on my site with the 5 steps. Okay, now we're back on my website, and actually Now we're back on my website, and let's go to the 5 steps that I was talking about earlier. Click on that, and you notice instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, notice how I've broken this down. The 5-step strategy number 1, create multi-channel communication. Strategy number 2, divide your communication team into 2 production levels. Number 3, always be who you are, where you are. Number 4, don't let money be a determining factor. Number 5, do not confuse irreverence for relevancy. And then if you go on, foundation of the 5 steps, disciple making, chart, the 5 steps of effective church communications and marketing. But you see how by giving these specific, clear labels and titles, you can take a lot of information, people can skim through it, but they know exactly what they're going to be getting into when they click on the different articles. Let me just click on this one right now, and I'll show you then how it's broken down in the article itself. You see it's a time of both and, not either or. The 3 channels of effective church communication: print, digital, people. We are living in a time of great communication transition. You need a communication team made up of people who are proficient with various channels of the communication revolution. Skills and ages don't matter. Respect and mutual encouragement do. Don't worry about changing the content of your message as you adapt it to different channels. You see, that makes it so much easier than if I just had all 5 articles, one big um, list of text people can read through, they can skim through, they can focus on what will help them be more effective. So in the next video, we'll continue with how to write for the web.